Well, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with you today and present this new information. We're going to talk about some of the new products from Nutramedix and also some of the new protocols. I want everyone to understand this analogy first, though. So we are all like this bathtub, and if the bathtub is overflowing dirty water onto the bathroom floor, then that means you're symptomatic. And on the top side of the bathtub on the left is are toxins coming into the bathtub, representing all these things that are listed there. And those faucets are wide open for most people. On the right side of the bathtub are water faucets that are supposed to be putting some clean water into the bathtub, which represents all these things. And those, unfortunately, for most people, are turned way down or almost completely off. And then at the bottom of the bathtub are drains that are supposed to get the toxins out of the bathtub. And so most people have constipation, which is defined as anything less than 3 bowel movements per day. And most people have liver toxicity, kidney toxicity, lymphatic congestion. Lymphatic congestion because people have a love for dairy products which clog up the lymphatic system, and there are many people in the United States at least are couch potatoes. They never exercise their muscles, which are the primary pumps for the lymphatic system. Anyway, to resolve disease, you must open up the clean water faucets on the right side of the bathtub, close off the dirty water faucets to the best of your ability, and then open up the drains at the bottom of the bathtub. So Dr. Beauchamp was a contemporary of Louis Pasteur, and he said the environment is everything. He was talking about the internal environment of the body, creating disease symptoms and allowing microbes to grow. And Pasteur said, no, the microbes are everything. But on Pasteur's deathbed, he said, the environment is everything, acknowledging that Beauchamp was right, he was wrong, but by that time it was too ingrained into the medical system, the medical literature, to ever turn back. So many years ago, one of my colleagues said, if you have a swamp full of alligators, you can either wrestle the alligators one at a time, or you can drain the swamp. So that's what a lot of the Nutramedix products are about, is draining the swamp. And that includes their various detoxification products. The algos and cilantro are quantum imprinted remedies that help to remove heavy metals and radioactive elements from the body. I don't know any product in the entire world that does as good a job at removing heavy metals and radioactive elements from the body as those do. So they shake loose from the cells the heavy metals and radioactive elements so that they can be cleared by the detox pathways. And then Sparga is designed to get rid of the sulfa drugs. About 30% of the chronically ill population have a genetic defect in their sulfation pathway enzymes, so therefore they cannot make glutathione in sufficient levels to detoxify their body. And if those enzymes are bound by pharmaceutical drugs, sulfa drugs, the sulfa-diabetic drugs, sulfa-diuretic drugs, sulfa-antibiotics, then those enzymes work even less well and produce less glutathione and less detoxification capability. But the Sparga helps to mobilize those sulfa drugs out of the body so that the enzymes can make glutathione more effectively. The rubber parsley are excellent remedies to detoxify the liver, the gallbladder, the kidneys, the lymph system, and the ground matrix. The ground matrix being the space between the cells. And they have very similar quantum imprints. So if a person develops allergy to one of those, then you can usually switch over to the other and continue to detoxify the patient. Usually those are given about 8 drops in 2 ounces of water every 15 minutes in order to detoxify and get over a Herxheimer reaction, usually in less than 1 or 2 hours. Whereas if you don't have those available and have a Herxheimer reaction, it'll take you 1 to 3 days. Okay, and then Pinella and Mapalo are remedies that help to get toxins out of the brain, the spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. And Nutramedix now has berberine combination in one bottle, which makes it a little easier for people. They usually take 15 drops in 2 ounces of water every 15 minutes. Now, dandelion is a newer product, and it helps to detoxify the liver. The Vitamin Plus helps to remove many toxins from the body, and we'll talk about that more later. But one of the better remedies that I found for detoxifying the mycotoxins, the mold toxins that most people are being exposed to. Magnesium malate, very important. It's necessary as a cofactor for about 300 different enzymes in the body, many of those involved in energy production. As a matter of fact, ATP, the energy molecule for the body, is bound by magnesium in the body and kept in that form until it's ready for use as a energy substance. Also, magnesium is one of the best things that you can take to prevent the harmful effects of electropollution, and we're being overwhelmed by electropollution in our environment now. And then zinc is a cofactor for 300 different enzymes in the body. 20 of those are detoxification enzymes, so that's also very important. I think most people that take 50 milligrams of zinc per day probably should take about 2 milligrams of copper per day as well, because otherwise you can become copper deficient, and that throws off the estrogen-progesterone ratio or the testosterone-progesterone ratio. All right, now vitamin D3 helps to detoxify because it codes for 2,000 different genes in the body, and many of those are detoxification enzymes. And then vitamin C and resveratrol help to bind up free radicals in the body, and Dr. Tom Levy believes that vitamin C is the most important of all vitamins, and I don't disagree with it. Dr. Linus Pauling was the one that did the groundbreaking research on vitamin C a few decades ago. Okay, Ezov is one of my favorite products from Nutramedix. Ezov is taken only at bedtime, and it's a very powerful remedy. So you start with only 1 drop every night for 4 nights, then 2 drops every night for 4 nights, then 3 drops every night for 4 nights, and eventually build up to about 8 drops if you're a small woman, or 10 drops if you're a medium-sized person, or 12 to 14 drops if you're a very large person. So Tim Eaton would definitely take 12 drops or more. The Ezov helps to correct the direction of spin of the chakras. This is very important because if any of the 7 chakras are backwards spinning, then that prevents the acupuncture meridians from being recharged by skeletal muscle contractions each day, and therefore the organs cannot receive the energy that they need from the acupuncture meridians to regenerate, and so the organs degenerate more rapidly and the patient dies sooner. Okay, the multi-symptom multimicrobial inflammation is what I refer to as the borreliosis plus co-infections. But some people have multi-symptom multimicrobial inflammation from fungal overgrowth in their body or mycotoxin production in their home or the workplace. But it can be a variety of other microbes as well. But most symptoms are caused by inflammation, including brain conditions. Inflammation is usually caused by white blood cell response to the microbes or the toxins. The toxins include heavy metals, man-made chemicals, including drugs. Pharmaceuticals are sometimes the worst chemicals that we're exposed to, and biotoxins from microbes and worm or parasite feces. The toxins increase microbial growth and also impair immunity, also impair organ detoxification function and hormone balance and neurological function. Microbes include mycoplasma, chlamydia, fungi, viruses, Borrelia, Bartonella, Rickettsia, protozoa, worms, etc. Anyway, to resolve inflammation, it's best to remove the toxins and the microbes simultaneously, as we talked about with Dr. Bischomp's bathtub analogy. So you treat the Herxheimer reaction as needed. For those that don't know what the Herxheimer reaction is, it's a die-off reaction that occurs in the body whenever toxin-producing microbes are killed off. And that can show up with a lot of different symptoms. Can be nausea, vomiting, muscle aches, joint aches, headaches, fatigue, confusion, brain fog, etc. Water fasting and modified juice fast or infrared sauna can cause spontaneous release of toxins from tissues, resulting in a Herxheimer reaction as well. So you don't have to be giving out microbial agents to get a Herxheimer reaction. But as I said, the berberine vanilla combination is very effective. About 15 or 16 drops in 2 ounces of water every 15 minutes usually will resolve a Herxheimer reaction in 1 to 2 hours. If that's not sufficient, then add some liposomal glutathione either topically or orally to that. Or if both of those fail, then you can always use organic coffee enema retained for about 10 minutes. And if that fails, then take a teaspoon of activated charcoal. The problem with taking that activated charcoal is that it binds not just the toxins, but also vitamins, minerals, herbs, pharmaceuticals, and so on. So you have to redose all those other things that are bound inadvertently by the charcoal about 2 to 3 hours after the charcoal dose. Okay, you can drain the lymphatic system also to help a Herxheimer reaction. So on the left side is the shallow lymphatics in a man, and those drain primarily into the axilla and into the groin and into the neck. And then the deep lymphatics we're seeing on the woman on the right. And as I said, a lot of people have clogged up the lymphatic system because they consume way too much dairy product. And it doesn't matter what dairy it comes from, whether it's a cow, a goat, a sheep, a water buffalo, a camel, or whatever. All dairy products clog up the lymphatic system. And then physical inactivity clogs up the lymphatic system because you lose your pump for the lymphatic system. But berberine and parsley help to drain the lymphatic system and the ground matrix. Now, so the woman on the left is laying on the floor with her ankles up on a chi machine. It doesn't have to be brand name chi machine. That one that's shown there is about $150 instead of $300 like the brand name chi machine. Or you can lay on your back on the bed and put your legs up in the air, pretend to pedal a bicycle in the air. If you can't put both legs up at the same time, put one leg up at a time, and then when that one gets tired, put that one down, put the other one up. But every time the knee extends, the ankle extends. Every time the knee flexes, the ankle flexes, and you get a pumping action of the calves and the thighs to pump the lymph fluid from your lower extremities through the pelvis, through the abdomen, through the chest, into the veins up here at the top part of the chest, where the toxins then are carried by the venous system through the detox organs and into the toilet. And anyway, all those methods for the lymphatic system are made better by the berberine and parsley. Now, this is another way to drain the lymphatic system, especially the head and neck, bouncing on a rebounder or jumping rope or pretending to jump rope. Now, if you have a paralyzed patient that has a neurological condition, you definitely want to drain the lymphatics of their brain. So a way to do that is to sit them down on this rebounder and put another person straddling them with one foot on either side of the butt of the patient that's sitting on the trampoline, and then put a belt around their chest so that the person standing up can hold on to the belt and keep the paralyzed patient from toppling over as they bounce. And as they bounce, the lymph is drained from the head. Okay, and you also want to try to get toxins out frequently. Nowadays, more important than it was just a few years ago. But infrared sauna is one of the best ways to get toxins out of the body. The firemen and the first responders at the event in New York City on September 11th, 2001, who did saunas on a regular basis after that, are mostly still alive. But those who did not do saunas are mostly dead because they died from cancer and from advanced lung disease. So sauna is life-saving. And if you can't sit down in a sauna, you can always get a lie-down infrared mat, put it on the bed, put a couple layers of cotton terry cloth towel on top of the mat, strip naked, lay down on the towels, cover up with another towel, cover up with a regular blanket, cover up with a thermal blanket to reflect the infrared light back into the body, And if you want to detoxify the brain, you can even get one of these UTKJ neck pads and put it on from the eyebrows all the way to the back of the head, and put some kind of strap to hold it in place and detoxify. But after you, before you go into the sauna or lay on the bedded top sauna, you want to take berberine vanilla algus to get the heavy metals released from the cells, and also niacin to dilate the blood vessels. That'll cause an itch and a flush, and that's a desirable thing. The rapid acting niacin. And then after the sauna is completed, you do about 30 or 40 minutes. And we'll build up to about 30 or 40 minutes in the sauna. Don't do 30 or 40 minutes the first time. Only about 5 minutes the first time. But then after the sauna, you get into the lukewarm shower and wash the toxins off the skin down the drain with a good quality soap. But don't stay in the shower very long, because if you don't have a whole house water filter, you're going to bring a lot of toxins in from the tap water into the body. So only a 1 or 2 minute shower. Okay, so causes of disease. There's physical toxins and electromagnetic toxins that stimulate microbes and impair the mitochondria in our cells. And then there's backwards chakra spin, as I mentioned previously, which impairs the recharging of our organs through the piezoelectric stimulation of the acupuncture meridians that run through those muscles. So if you get an EMF shielded canopy over the bed, which I'll show in the subsequent slide, and take Ezog drops every night, then you'll correct the direction of spin of your chakras, which is going to allow your skeletal muscles to recharge your organs during the day when you do physical activity. Now, low NAD plus levels in relationship to NADH levels also impairs the ability of the cells to produce ATP. Now, you can do ozone therapy daily to correct that. After about 7 days, you'll have a much increased NAD plus level. We should have about 700 times more NAD plus than NADH. And most people, it's not that type of ratio. They have sometimes the equal amounts of the NAD plus and NADH. In order for the body to make the NAD plus, it's essential to make ATP. They break down structural protein to do it, or they, which causes muscle wasting, or they can use the enzyme that converts pyruvate into lactate, and the lactic acid builds up in the body, and it becomes so acidic that they grow microbes and can't release toxins, and their enzymes stop working. Anyway, another cause of disease is conscious and subconscious emotions. Now, the Alantia is really helpful for reducing stress, and if you do about 15 drops before every meal, before every bedtime, and anytime you feel stressed, usually the stress levels don't build up progressively during the day, and the immune system stays stronger, the digestion works better, and it's easier to go to sleep at night. If you're going to take Alantia at night for sleep, it's about 30 drops every 15 minutes until you fall asleep. And then the other thing to do for the emotions is visualize, shout, and forgive. That's on my website, drleecalvin.com. And I strongly urge everybody listening to go do that process of visualizing, shouting, and forgiving, because it makes a huge difference in the physical health. Okay, there's also dental issues and scars and jewelry. A lot of people don't realize the metal necklaces, the metal bracelets, the metal rings, the metal umbilical rings, toe rings, nipple rings. All those are disrupting energy flow. And so the less metal you have in the body, the better the energy is going to flow through your body, and the healthier your organs are going to be. Also, a lot of people nowadays have adrenal exhaustion, which then leads to clinical hypothyroidism. And to know whether you have hypothyroidism, you measure your temperature before you get out of bed in the morning. And if it's less than 97.8 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's a little less than 37 degrees centigrade, then you probably have hypothyroidism. And you either have adrenal exhaustion or iodine deficiency, or both, causing that. And poor food choices, various nutritional deficiencies, especially magnesium. 87% of the American public are deficient in magnesium. It's probably that high in Europe as well, or close to it. Vitamin C deficiency, vitamin D3, vitamin K2, the vitamin A, zinc, copper. So the ones that are green there, Nutramedix produces and has extremely good quality. And a clog up lymphatic system, as I mentioned, and berberine parsley helps that. Physical activity helps that. Avoiding dairy products helps that. Microbial overload. The most common microbial overload is fungus, followed by borreliosis, followed by viruses and parasites. And Nutramedix makes many antimicrobials to get rid of those microbes. Lectins in the food can cause clumping of red blood cells and impair the white cells from getting the tissues and working, and also impairs the delivery of oxygen to the tissues. I'll show that in the subsequent slide here. Anyway, I would urge everyone to learn how to do this technique. When you use your right hand to hold your left index and thumb, the way it's shown in the slide, and you put that in your lap, and then you take deep breaths in through the nose, hold for 1 second, and then out through the mouth. And while you're holding your left index and thumb and breathing deeply, like I just described, you would also close your eyes and visualize yourself in the most relaxing place in nature that you can remember, and remember it with all 5 senses at the same time. And then it trains almost all parts of the brain into that pleasant memory, which then reduces the fight or flight sympathetic overdrive and improves the parasympathetic, which will help digestion, immune function, sleep, etc. Okay, so this is when normal blood on the right side there that's not been exposed to lectin, but on the left side, that person was exposed to lectin foods a few minutes before this slide was taken. And the lectin foods are legumes, basically beans, peas, lentils are the worst, and then wheat, rye, peanuts, potatoes, bell peppers, eggplant, tomato skins, tomato seeds, but not tomato flesh. And so electromagnetic pollution can also cause a clumping of the red blood cells like the one on the left. Anyway, those cells on the left cannot go through the capillary beds single file one at a time to deliver oxygen to tissues, so the tissues become starved with oxygen and not enough white cells get into the tissues to carry away toxins and kill microbes. Now, this is a research from Germany where they showed that if you're less than 300 meters or 300 yards from a cell phone tower, that you'll have all these symptoms on the right, fatigue, irritability, headaches, and so on, all the way down to cardiac arrhythmias. And the further you are away from the cell phone tower, the less those symptoms. So if you're that close to a cell phone tower, you probably need a metallized cloth canopy over your bed so that you don't have the effect of the MF pollution during the night. I'll show that in the subsequent slide. Now, these are some of the meters that you can use to measure electric pollution. The one on the left to measure body voltage, the one in the middle measures magnetic fields and radio frequency. And it's only about $110 US, maybe $100 euro, 100 euros. And then, and then this one on the right measures very high frequency. The one in the middle measures up to about 10 gigahertz. The one on the right measures up to 60 gigahertz, which is the highest frequency that's being broadcast upon us at this point. The 60 gigahertz was used by the U.S. military as a weapon before it was given to the communications industry to function as a rapid delivery of electromagnetic energy through the air to allow rapid streaming of videos and so on. Okay, Dr. Klinghardt in 2008 described the research that was done in Switzerland where they exposed a fungal culture. First thing they put a fungal culture inside of a Faraday cage and took measurements of the amount of mycotoxins being produced, and then they removed the Faraday cage, and the fungus was then exposed to the Wi-Fi in that room and the computers nearby and the cell phone tower short distance down the street. And the mold produced 600 times more mycotoxins when exposed to electromagnetic fields than when they were shielded by a Faraday cage. So electromagnetic pollution is not only adversely affecting our body directly, but also indirectly by increasing the mycotoxin production in our body and mycotoxin production in our homes and workplaces. Okay, but anyway, mycotoxins are immunosuppressive, neurodegenerative, and cancer-causing. Other than that, they're not a problem. Since we cannot get rid of 100% of the fungus in our body and our home, we must do what we can to try to reduce the EMFs so that the funguses that are there don't produce as many mycotoxins and cause so much immune suppression, cancer, and neurodegenerative disease. Also, it's a good idea to turn off the electric breakers that go to your bedroom every night at bedtime so you're not being exposed to that. And if you live in a city or a town, it's probably wise to be sleeping under a Faraday canopy every night and ground that canopy to the earth. Here's some canopies from, take pictures taken off the internet. The one on the right, I call a teepee canopy, suspended from one hook in the ceiling above the center of the bed. Most people feel claustrophobic inside that one. The one on the left is my favorite canopy because it shields 99.99% of the EMF up to 1 gigahertz and 99% of the EMF from 1 gigahertz up to 10 gigahertz. So it's pretty effective. But anyway, at night you would let down those pieces of cloth from each end of the bed so that they're all overlapping and make a complete enclosure around the bed. If the bed is on the floor other than the first floor, then you have to have a similar cloth on the floor extending out from the edges of the bed enough so the cloth from the ceiling can touch the cloth on the floor to make it a complete enclosure. And then you take your Ezog drops right at bedtime and get deep healing sleep, dream sleep, which will heal your psyche and also correct the direction of spin of your chakras. Now, Dr. Martin Paul did an excellent article in 2013 and many articles since then about the voltage-gated calcium channels. But those are on every cell of the body, and when they're stimulated by electrical pollution in our environment, it causes a flooding of calcium into the cell, which then causes free radical damage inside the cell, nitric oxide, superoxide, peroxynitrite, which damages the mitochondria, the cell membranes, and the DNA. So that's a major problem. And unfortunately, it gets ignored by most of the authorities in the United States. I think that people in Europe are more aware of this, and governments are paying more attention to it. Anyway, the electromagnetic field activated voltage-gated calcium channels cause release of excess neurotransmitters and hormones, and we're all being affected by that. But anyway, in addition to using the EMF canopy, a lot of people need to take some Amatia or Relaxmedix at bedtime to improve the depth and quality of sleep, so that they get both delta wave sleep and rapid eye movement dream sleep. Anyway, magnesium malate is one of the best things out there to get rid of the calcium flooding into the cells, which causes so much damage. On that website, bioinitiative.org, there's 5,200 articles showing the harm on the human body from electromagnetic pollution. In order to get deep healing sleep, our brains must go into delta wave sleep, 0.1 hertz to 3 hertz, or 0.1 to 3 cycles per second. And if you're in an electric polluted environment with even the 50 hertz from Europe or 60 hertz from the United States wall current, that will cause the brain to entrain into a higher frequency, which prevents the delta wave sleep. So if you don't get delta wave sleep, you don't get healing of your physical body. Also, when you're going those high frequencies, you don't shift from sympathetic overdrive, fight or flight mode of your autonomic nervous system, to the parasympathetic, and so you don't get regeneration of your organs during the night. Parasympathetic is necessary for organ regeneration. Also, if you don't get the delta wave sleep, you don't get the rapid eye movement dream sleep right after each episode of delta wave sleep, so you don't give your psyche and you don't correct the direction of spin of your chakras, so therefore your muscular activities during the day won't recharge your organs. Anyway, these eye drops will help to correct the direction of spin of the chakras if you're sleeping inside of a metallized cloth canopy and you've disabled the breakers that go to your bedroom area. I believe everybody should sleep in a canopy if they live in the city or town. We're now getting EMF blasted from the satellites. A lot of the satellites are broadcasting up to 10 gigahertz down upon us as we sleep. So even if you live out in the countryside, you probably still need a canopy. Okay, so it contributes to a variety, electric pollution contributes to a variety of symptoms, including cardiac arrhythmias, and it increases adrenaline, vasoconstriction, causes hypoxia, and metabolic lactic acidosis of the tissues, which then causes magnesium to be wasted. The magnesium binds to the lactic acid and carries it out through the kidneys into the toilet, and then magnesium is wasted from the body. That's why 87% of the U.S. population are deficient in magnesium, probably. Okay, some of the Nutramedix products that help the electric pollution, as I mentioned, magnesium is probably the most important thing to do. And then dandelion, because of its quantum imprints. Parsley, also because of quantum imprints. That's the new parsley, not the old parsley. I think the new parsley will be coming out fairly soon. And then all of the new BBS product, Nutri products, the BRL, the BRT, and the BBS, are all quantum imprinted to help to reduce the effect of electric pollution on the human body. Now, this is a photograph of the ceiling fan in a room in a house in Florida. The fluffy stuff hanging down from the ceiling fan are the hyphae from the fungus. So this is about the worst I've ever seen. Fortunately, most people are not affected with the mold and fungus in the house to this degree. But we know that 1/2 of all the homes in the United States are affected by electric pollution and by mold overgrowth like this. And if you are, you're going to have major health challenges because the mycotoxins that are produced by the molds are immunosuppressive, neurodegenerative, liver toxic, and cancer causing. Okay, so six steps to eliminate mold. You first want to do some testing to see if your house is affected by mold. So you put these several culture plates out in every room for 1 hour and then collect them after an hour. It's also good to put one plate on an outside doorstep or outside windowsill also for an hour to use as a control. And then you can also do a HERTS-Me test, which is just doing a swab of door frames and so on throughout the house. Anyway, you clean after you figure out whether you have a mold fungus problem, then you clean up the air with hydroxyl air, but you also have to get rid of the water supply that's growing the fungus. The fungus won't grow unless there's a water supply, a water leak under the sink or toilet or tub, or a ceiling leak. We need to eat an antifungal ketogenic diet for about 12 weeks, and you can download a copy of the diet from my website, drleegalvin.com. You need to do sinus irrigation at least once a day for 12 weeks. And the first time you do just saline, the subsequent times you add some Lugol's iodine to the saline, as long as you're not allergic to iodine, and you build up to about 12 drops per cup of 12 drops of 2% Lugol's iodine added to every cup of saline irrigant. The instruction for that's also on my website. And then you take antifungal herbals. The very best antifungal herbals I've found are Commanda and Tongarana, both from Nutramedix. And the other one that I use sometimes is Podiarco, which Nutramedix doesn't make yet. Okay, you can get mold and mycotoxins out of the gut and by using binders. And so the Nutramedix Binder Plus does a really good job at that. So the Binder Plus has all these constituents in it: agave, zeolite, bentonite clay, charcoal, aloe vera, folate minerals, and portobello mushroom, the baby ones. And each of those has a different group of toxins that they bind. So that's why all those different things are in there. Now we'll switch over into talking about borreliosis. The arrow on the right is pointing toward a single Borrelia that at one point invaded a human cell and divided and multiplied it many times, and then finally ruptured the cell, and now we see all these offspring of that single Borrelia coming out of the cells looking for another cell to invade. Those Borrelia go through a cell membrane in about 1 to 2 seconds, like a corkscrew, just twisting and moving forward as they go. And there's about 476,000 new cases of Borrelia each year in the United States, hundreds of thousands in Europe, but at least 14% of all the world population are affected by Borrelia. I estimate that it's approaching 50%, but these are therefore very conservative numbers. Borreliosis is called the second great imitator. Syphilis was called the first great imitator. But if you go to the Nutramedix.ec website, which is valuable for other reasons, so you should write that one down, you can find 425 different illnesses that are caused by or mimic or that contribute to the Borrelia, or contributed to by the borreliosis. So if you click on any one of those links, it'll take you to the page in the internet wherever that article is found. Okay, so borreliosis can mimic neurological diseases, psychiatric diseases, cardiac diseases, chronic fatigue, fetal syndromes, and sudden infant death syndrome. And then these are some of the microbes that show up in borreliosis. So the Borrelia itself, there's 36 different species, at least 4 are known to be causes of disease in humans. I believe, based on my experience, that it's much higher than 4 species. But most laboratories only test for 1 species of Borrelia. There's 32 species of Bartonella, 14 plus species of Babesia, and this 5 or 6 species of Protomyxozoa, which Dr. Fry described at Fry Laboratories in Scottsdale, Arizona. And then Leptospira, which is endemic in Cuba, and this is also found in the United States. Coxiella, Ehrlichia, Anaplasma, and then a variety of Rickettsia, as well as hundreds of species of Mycoplasma. And all those are called co-infections because often they come into the body at the same time as the Borrelia, either via tick bites or flea bites or mosquito bites or other biting insects, not just ticks. You can also get Borrelia from French kissing, from sexual intercourse, from blood transfusions, from transfer of the Borrelia and other co-infections through the placenta of the fetus in the womb. And then there's a variety of opportunistic or co-conspirators. Those are protozoa and worms and fungi and treponema and viruses. Anyway, there's lots of research that show that pharmaceutical antibiotics don't work very well for Borrelia. From 1989 up to 2019, there's articles in the literature showing that, so you can look those up later. So why don't antibiotics work for chronic Lyme disease? Well, lots of reasons. This is a micrograph, electron micrograph of a single Borrelia spirochete coming in the top left corner of the slide and going out the bottom right corner of the slide. And this Borrelia is exposed to antibiotics, pharmaceutical antibiotics, a couple of hours before this micrograph is taken. And you see these round body forms budding off of the spirochete. And the round body form contains all the genetic material necessary to make another spirochete. And the round body forms can live in the cells and in the tissues for months or years until the coast is finally clear. And then when the coast is clear and no more antibiotics are being given, then they transform back into into the spirochete, the spiral-shaped bacteria. So that's the pleomorphic nature of Borrelia. And then also, Borrelia produces biofilm. The top left corner is a biofilm. It's a snot-like substance, stuff like comes out of your nose, that shields the microbes from being attacked by the white blood cells or from a variety of different antimicrobial agents. On the right side is a biofilm that's been exposed to doxycycline, but you see there's still lots of green dots. That means there's a lot of live microbes. There's only a few red dots, which are dead microbes. So the vast majority of the microbes are still alive. And then on the bottom left is a biofilm that was exposed to Bandrol only. Most of the microbes in that biofilm are dead, but there's still a pretty significant amount of biofilm. The middle image there is biofilm that's exposed to cemento. So most of the biofilm is gone, but there's still a few live microbes. But on the bottom right is a biofilm that's exposed to Bandrol and cemento. And so there's no significant number of microbes or biofilm, either one. And Bandrol and cemento are, the herbs that are given in the first part of the Calvin Support Program to get rid of Borrelia. And Dr. Iwasapi did this work at the University of New Haven, Connecticut. Okay, but anyway, she also did research there in vitro to show the anti-Borrelia effect of these various Nutramedix products at the bottom. They all had some fairly good anti-Borrelia effects. The most powerful she found were Nutramedix stevia and jalapa that's found in the Adula product. But all of them had some effect. The doxycycline was effective against the spirochetal but the doxycycline was not effective against the cyst form or the biofilm form, but many of the herbs were effective against the cyst form and the biofilm form that I just showed you on the previous slide. So that's why the Calvin Support Program works whenever the antibiotics fail. Okay. And we also found that she found in that study that stevia for Nutramedix was more effective than two other types of stevia that were on the U.S. market at the time. So there's some more effective antimicrobial properties of Nutramedix stevia compared to others. Okay, there's a variety of disease processes that are associated with Borrelia. And that includes chronic fatigue syndrome, atherosclerotic disease, cancer, autism, multiple sclerosis, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Alzheimer's, dementia. And so this is not a minor problem. Dr. Judith McCloskey in Switzerland found that 25% of her patients, 25% of the patients that she evaluated post-mortem at autopsy had Borrelia in their brain, contributing to the dementia, and 65% had treponema, which is another spiral-shaped bacteria in the same family as the one that causes syphilis. And so 90% had some kind of spirochete in the brain. Now, Dr. Richard Horowitz at his office in New York, upstate New York, in 2006 did a study with about 100 patients using the Calvin Support Program, and he did it only on patients that had failed all the antibiotic therapy that he could think of giving them. And he found that the Calvin Support Program, which you can see at Nutramedix.ec website, was effective in 70% of those patients. So he reported that at the International Lyme and Associated Disease Conference in 2007. And he was very excited about 70% getting better, even though antibiotics had failed. But I was not satisfied with that, so I went to his office and evaluated some of the failures. And we found that the patients that had failed, it was not usually mostly because of the protocol, but because of other things that were going on in their life. Most of them had a mouthful of mercury amalgam fillings. Most of them had mold or fungus growing in their house and mycotoxins in the air of their house and in their body. Most of them had electric pollution and were dehydrated. They were drinking sodas and coffee and calling that hydration, no water. And they also had a variety of food allergies and were eating excessive amounts of sugar that were feeding the microbes. So anyway, we modified the program, and after that, 80% of the patients had a response to the cow support program, even if they had failed antibiotics. And then Dr. Armin Schwarzbach in Europe did a study where he also found 80% of the patients improved on the cow support program. So that's a replication of research. Now, on the left side here is the new cow support program, and on the right is the old cow support program. There were a lot of people that were complaining about the fact that there were so many different products and so many dosings per day that I felt compelled to redesign the program to address those complaints. So the old program had 14 products, the new one has 10 products. The old program has 4 doses per day, the new one has 3 doses per day. It's still a complicated program, but it's easier to implement than the old program. And I'm not going to go through all the details of this because you'll be able to see that on the Nutramedix.ec website fairly soon. Anyway, this resolves Lyme disease or borreliosis and co-infections in 80% of the patients empirically, but if you do muscle testing or electrical screening, you can increase the effectiveness up to about 90% by customizing it for the patient. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And here's some references about electrical screening and muscle testing if you're not familiar with those. You can look at that slide later. I'll make these slides available to Nutramedix so that they can make them available to you. These are some of the complaints that have said, too many different products. The Nutramedix still has some products that can be used if one of the products in the Nutramedix cow support program is allergenic or not effective. The Nutramedix, Tongarana, Teasel, and Kima are all very good backup herbal products to use in place of those other antimicrobials. And the new protocol is going to have bromelain in it also because bromelain is actually a bit more effective than serrapeptase in breaking up the amyloid and the fibrin clots that people are developing if they've been exposed to COVID illness or COVID injections or been shed upon by somebody that had COVID illness or COVID injections. And then if you find that a person develops allergy to serrapeptase or bromelain, you can find online more expensive fibrinolytic enzymes and the amyloidogenic enzymes, the nattokinase and lumbrokinase. Okay, Nutramedix I strongly urge people to do every night at bedtime when they have Lyme, borreliosis, and co-infections because a lot of people have shallow sleep, as well as getting inside the metallized cloth canopy and turning off the breakers that go to the bedroom. But sleep is really, really important to heal from a chronic disease. And then the energies of Sparga and cilantro have been put into the new parsley, which will reduce the number of products in the new cow support program. Okay, so chemically the BRL, NutriBRL is cemento, vandrol, stevia, and minerals. And there's a variety of imprints in it, quantum physical imprints that help it to deal with Herxheimer reaction, reduce inflammation, mobilize heavy metals, glyphosate, protect against EMF pollution, and then also quantum physical energies to help the body to deal with 23 different species of Borrelia, a variety of other species of co-infections. Okay, so you've got to build up to 80 drops twice a day to make sure that we get rid of more of the microbes. And there's a break, a 36-hour break every 2 weeks after day 39 in the new cow support program. The 36-hour break is intended to allow the microbes that are hiding to come out of hiding, and you then pound them again with the antimicrobials after that 36-hour break. So during the 36 hours, the round body forms that we saw in the previous electron micrograph oftentimes will transform into spirochetes and come out of the cell during that time, then you pound them again. Okay, NutraBRT is chemically commanded Hutuian and minerals, and it has a variety of quantum physical imprints, very effective against fungi, and it also helps to deal with Herxheimer reactions, heavy metals, glyphosate, electropollution. Deals acts like homeopathic because the quantum physical imprints of the microbes that are in there. So it's basically isonozoes, and the NutraBRT is also stopped for 36 hours every couple of weeks. The NutraBBS is basically elecampane, capirona bark, and jalapa, and blackberry leaf. So those are some of the components of inula and mora, plus the trace minerals. And this is very effective against babesia and worms and protozoal parasites and various fungi. And if you want it to be effective against the fungi, though, you need to be on a ketogenic diet. Effective against Herxheimer reactions, inflammation, heavy metals, glyphosate, electropollution. Has quantum imprints to get rid of a variety of other critters, toxoplasmosis, malaria, various protozoa, various worms. And take a break for 36 hours every 2 weeks on that as well. And so just keep the rotation going. BRL, BRT, BBS, until the patient has been free of symptoms for at least a month, preferably 2 months, and then you can come off and see how you do. If you start seeing any symptoms returning at all, then immediately go back on the protocol for a few more months to make sure that you eliminated enough of the microbes for the immune system to get ahead of the microbes that are remaining. And this is my friend down in Australia, Dr. Isaac Goldman, who did a study that was published in a peer-reviewed journal in May of 2019, and he found that when they analyzed 91 million patients with 250 million patient years, they were able to reduce the incidence of 8 potentially fatal infectious illnesses by an average of 89 to 90%. And so that's better than any vaccine that I'm aware of by far. And the side effects were only 2%. And those were mild and short duration, no hospitalization, no trips to the doctor's office, no death. Okay, Nutramedix research in rats was very interesting. I'll put all those slides, all those points up. But they found that the glucometics in rats would reduce the cholesterol, reduce the triglyceride, reduce the blood sugar, and reduce the blood pressure if the blood pressure was elevated. So, and it had no adverse effects on the chemistry of the animals. There's the research for that in peer-reviewed literature. And then that's some of the same there. So this is the research that was done on 6 humans in South America, in Peru. So they gave the patients this glucometics, which is a combination of stevia and cemento. That was the pentacyclic chemotype of keratomatosum, which doesn't really exist in the marketplace except through Nutramedix. And what they found is that in those 6 patients, they improved all of them, the diabetic condition in all of them. So many of them were on pharmaceutical drugs. Blood glucose was decreased in 7 to 12 days. 5 of the 6 patients reduced their average blood glucose by at least 50 milligrams per deciliter. So it's not just a little bit, but a lot. 2 patients came off of pharmaceutical drugs, and another reduced from 2 drugs to 1. and all the patients have better blood sugar control, and there's the research for that. So what I pointed out is that in rats it reduces the blood cholesterol, the blood triglycerides that are elevated, the blood sugar is elevated, and the blood pressure is elevated. And basically what I just described there is the syndrome X, or the metabolic syndrome, like the hyperinsulinemic syndrome. And that affects 60% of the people of the United States and a lesser percentage of the population of Europe, but it's still a fairly common condition in Europe. So if you have patients that have obesity, hypertension, prediabetes or diabetes, elevated lipids, then you should strongly consider putting them on the Nutramedix to try to improve their outcome. Now we'll talk a little bit about the Nutramedix methyl support. This is a graphic from a book that Dr. Amy Yasko did back in 2005 called Genetic Bypass. But on the right upper circle is the primary methylation cycle. And you see on the top right corner of that circle is SAMe, S-adenosylmethionine. So S-adenosylmethionine is the primary methylator for the body. So it methylates DNA and RNA in viruses and makes them less active. It methylates neurotransmitters and makes them more active. And 70% of the SAMe that's produced each day is used up producing creatine, okay, which then goes to creatinine. But if you give the patient creatine monohydrate, then you'll spare some of the SAMe, which then can be used to methylate viruses and make them inactive, and methylate neurotransmitters to make them more active. So that's why in the protocol it has creatine as one of the primary ingredients. And you see also in that upper right circle, TMG is converted to DMG, which then helps to regenerate methionine from homocysteine. And methionine is a precursor for S-adenosylmethionine. And that's why there's trimethylglycine in there in fairly substantial amounts. And then vitamin B2 is necessary for some of the enzymes in this circle. The methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase needs vitamin B2. And then the vitamin B6 is necessary in the sulfation pathway down there. You can't make glutathione without it, so that's why it's in there. And then the methylfolate is in that middle circle. The 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate makes methylfolate, tetrahydrofolate. So you give an active substance rather than the folate or folic acid precursor. And then in the methyl B12, which is in the top right circle. All right, so I just described a lot of what I just said here on this slide, in that previous slide. But there's a picture of the methyl complete. And if a person has impaired detox pathways, in my opinion, you should start with only about 1/8 of a capsule of this, because it's very, very potent, and it will kickstart the detoxification pathways. And then, every day you can add another 1/8 of a capsule to the dose until you get up to a full capsule, or how much ever the patient can tolerate it. But because it's a very strong remedy and so jump starts the detoxification pathways, you need to be cautious that you don't get a patient feeling worse because of a Herxheimer type reaction from mobilizing too many toxins. Okay, going to shift to the last topic here, which is the parasites. Parasites were underestimated grossly by conventional laboratory testing, and electrical screening muscle testing can often find the parasites when conventional laboratory tests miss them. But anyway, worms take up heavy metals into their body, and when they die, they release heavy metals back into our body. So if you're going to do any kind of parasite treatment, you also need to be taking algas or cilantro, probably along with some additional chlorella. Cracked chlorella or modified citrus pectin will bind the heavy metals that get dumped into the gut by the dying parasites. And then also take the Bover panella to help to deal with the toxins that are released. And here's a bunch of herbal and pharmaceutical drugs that are used for parasite treatment. The ones in green on the left are in the Nutramedix lineup. And then there's also food-grade diatomaceous earth, not available for Nutramedix, but available online and sometimes in health food stores to be able to get rid of the parasites in the gut. Some people can't tolerate the food-grade diatomaceous earth, but probably 99% of the population can. So I usually start with that and then move over into the Nutramedix herbal antiparasitics and only resort to the pharmaceuticals if everything else fails. Now this is the photomicrograph, photomicrograph that Dr. Alan McDonald made of a worm in the brain of a patient that died with multiple sclerosis. So when he got samples of brain tissue and cerebrospinal fluid from the pathology bank in Denver, Colorado, and analyzed those, he found little roundworms in 10 out of 10 patients with multiple sclerosis and 5 out of 5 patients with Alzheimer's dementia. And inside these worms, when he did microdissection, he found Borrelia, Bartonella, Babesia, and other Lyme-related creatures. So what he concluded was that when these creatures die in the brain, which they do, or when they poop, defecate in the brain, that they release those smaller creatures into the brain, which continues the inflammation of the brain, which then eventually causes the patients to have the multiple sclerosis or the Alzheimer's dementia. So that those Lyme-related creatures are living inside of the worms. That's endosymbionts. Now, what I did when I learned that work that Dr. McDonald did back in 2017, he has an excellent YouTube article on YouTube article or YouTube video where you can learn about the nematodes or the parasites in the brain of patients with MS, how it's listed there. So anyway, when I found that out, I started testing patients energetically for worms in the brain. And I was shocked because I found it not in just patients with multiple sclerosis and Alzheimer's dementia, but also patients with brain fog, patients with headaches, patients with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, patients with Parkinson's. So it's actually probably a fairly common thing. Dr. Eva Sapi at the University of New Haven, Connecticut, did an interesting study about 10 years ago where she analyzed the critters inside the gut, the creatures inside the gut of the ticks that had Borrelia in their gut. And if they had Borrelia in their gut, about 30 or 40% of them had a little roundworm in their gut, which she called a microfilaria. And I'm pretty sure it's the same little roundworm that Dr. McDonald is seeing in the brains of these autopsies. In the United States, I found a pathologist at parasitetesting.com who's willing to analyze the cerebrospinal fluid of patients that are suspected of having these worms in the brain if you want to have a conventional test to verify that, especially if you're going to use a pharmaceutical drug. But he has not told anybody else in his laboratory that he's willing to do this research project. It will take an act of Congress to get it approved as a test for his lab in general, so he's just going to do it as a research project. But you may be able to find a pathologist in Europe that's willing to analyze the cerebrospinal fluid. If you get a sample of cerebrospinal fluid and centrifuge it, and then look at the sediment of the centrifuge, you'll see worms in essentially 100% of patients that have the parasite in the brain. Dr. McDonald found he had to slice 100 to 1,000 slices of the brain to find one worm. So that's not a very efficient way to do it, but the cerebrospinal fluid will find it easily. These patients where I found it, I tested them for pharmaceuticals and herbals, and most of them actually test best for fenbendazole, which is a dog wormer in the United States, a worming drug that's used for treatment in animals because it hasn't been approved in humans. But as long as the patients can learn how to move or whinny or bark, I allow them to go buy some of that at the health food store or at the feed store or the pet store and take it. But it won't go into the brain very well unless you mix it with DMSO. Dimethyl sulfoxide is a universal solvent. Now, you can also use liposomal artemisinin, or liposomal fenbendazole is available in the United States. But you must use vopimethalin with it because they're going to get a Herxheimer reaction in the brain, which is not going to be a good thing. You also give them the enzymes 30 minutes before food to break up the fibrin in the blood vessels. And give them august to bind up the metals that are released from the dying worms. And then you also give them cemento or commanda, or both, along with the pharmaceutical or herbal treatment for the worms, because, as I said, you're going to release Borrelia, Bartonella, Babesia, Ehrlichia from those dying worms into the brain tissue. You need to have something that will kill those off. And then you use an infrared light shined on both the jugular veins as well as the head for 30 minutes after the herbs are taken. This is the light that I use. You can find them on Amazon for about $15 for the light, about $6 for the power adapter, and they're on different pages on the internet. But you have to have both in order for them to work. That light has a photosensor in the center of it. If you do that in a room that has too much light coming in, the infrared lights won't come on. But if you go into a very dark room, the lights will come on, and they'll penetrate about 3 inches into the body, about 7 centimeters into the body. Okay, so there, we made it to the end.